Each year since preschool, me and my best friend Lily would hold a horror night. We'd do a sleepover, decorate her or my bedroom in the cheesiest out-of-season Halloween props we could lay our hands on, watch some bad movies, and then culminate the evening by finding something creepy to do. Although the last part was something we'd only done a few times before, now that we were old enough to be allowed to go out at night. The first year we explored an abandoned train tunnel. In the year after that, we broke into an empty asylum with a makeshift Ouija board. In reality, though, those nightly adventures were more cold and uneventful than exciting. Lily wasn't as much of a horror lover as I was, and at the same time, she didn't scare that easily, so I couldn't fault her for not being too excited for this year's horror night. I bet it's gonna be so fun walking around in the freezing cold at midnight again. You really know how to entertain a girl, don't you? She grinned at me after I brought up my new plan at the school gate. No, listen, I did a lot of research, and I mean a lot. And it turns out there's a haunted mansion literally in our town, and it's been empty for years and almost no one even knows it exists. Okay, she sighed laughingly. Haunted mansion, super creepy, I get it. I then told her of the website I found the house on. It seemed credible to me at the time, though I must admit I was at least half blinded by sheer excitement and half blinded by the hope that Lily shared my excitement. On the website there were copies of police reports and newspaper clippings, I continued. So about 70 years ago there was a huge family murder and stuff happened and half of it burned down and, just typical horror stuff. All of this is real, by the way, I swear, but after that, there's been at least 3 cases of suspicious deaths in the house. All of them were teens that broke into the mansion. I glanced at Lily, who was having way too much fun ruining my carefully planned presentation, and just stood there grinning widely and staring at me expectantly. Do you know Walter's Wood Road at the Northern Forest? It's right there. I already drove by it and it's really there. It looks just like on the picture. Oh, I know that place, Lily said softly, her grin faltering for just a second. My gran talked about that place sometimes. My mom says it's all to scare kids, though. Lily's family had lived there for generations, far longer than mine, who just moved here right before I was born when the new factory opened. Hearing this made the hairs on my skin shoot up, both from excitement and curiosity. She punched me playfully on the shoulder. Fine, I'll put up with another horror night, but you owe me pizza. Again, by the way. And just like that, the promise of a free slice of pizza set in motion a chain of events that would leave both of us in pieces. Fast forward a couple of weeks and there we were, in a discount bin at our local dollar store. Halloween had been months ago, and honestly, this was peak timing and prime location to get the tackiest and cheapest Halloween decorations. Lily grunted from behind an aisle. I peeked the corner to see her standing there in a Frankenstein mask so ridiculously cheaply made, the scariest thing it could do was make you die from laughter. I grinned at her before jumping back in my aisle to find something even worse to make her laugh. The night of the sleepover was fun, and I expected nothing less. She was quite a drinker though, so halfway into the third movie, she already started dozing off. I shook her awake, and before she was fully conscious, I was already flinging the scarf around my neck while shoving my feet in my boots. It took us 15 minutes to walk to the other part of town, near the edge of the northern forest. I had pre-planned this route because it was the creepiest I could think of, but none of my efforts could count on any appreciation from Lily, who despite her ever-positive attitude couldn't resist mentioning just how cold it was this night several times. I tried to spike her enthusiasm by telling her about what I found online. Remember when your nan said it was body snatchers? I started. Well, I looked it up. I even went to the library and some old town tales actually say the same thing. Lily bumped into me playfully with her shoulder. After the last murders, apparently there were stories in the town that the kids were seen after they were already buried. So like zombies? Her eyes twinkled. She wasn't much into horror, but she did love zombies. More like creatures that consume your body and then take over your form. So how cool is that? Yeah, if you get stabbed by a hobo who wants to steal your jacket, I mean your form, at least I can tell your mom that you were excited about it. She snapped back at me. We're here, I said, and her laughter died down swiftly. Even though I'd seen the house earlier that week, standing in front of it, its icy shape looming over us, its damaged roof contrasting against the darkening grey sky, was something different entirely. It looked like it had been preserved in a jar of formaldehyde. It was damaged and crumbling, sure, but it looked oddly untouched. It was stained with dark rot, yet it looked like decades of sun and storm had stripped it from its color, desaturated and pale. It radiated such a stunning combination of creepy and downright odd that it took us a few seconds to compose ourselves. I don't feel so good about this anymore, she confessed in her tiniest voice. I felt the same way. The house was much more than I anticipated, but at the same time I felt a sense of pride knowing that I had finally found something that scared Lily as much as it scared me. This is so cool, I said, not sounding half as confident as I tried to, determined to see the inside of the house. The front windows all seemed boarded up. The doorknob didn't budge. The door felt solid as rock, even though it looked like it had a density of wet cardboard. Lily was still standing on the porch, just staring at the top floors of the building. I'm really not feeling up for this, she finally spoke. Well, I guess we could go home, if you admit to everyone at school on Monday that you chickened out. A flash of lightning lashed out above us, followed by a booming roll of thunder. Lily looked at me, thick drops of rain now pelting themselves on her hair and shoulders. Like an angel she stood there, despite the tension, still beautiful enough to floor me. Fuck you, she smiled at me. Did you bring an umbrella? You really want to go back? I asked, half disappointed and half glad to have an excuse to leave without looking like a wimp again. Oh no, we're going in there. I'm not letting you have this one. Her smile twice as big now, eyes twinkling like they did every time she mocked me. I just bet the building is such a dump there's gonna be as much rain inside as out here. I had to catch up with Lily by the time I had managed to fix the hood of my jacket and fish the flashlight out of my backpack. The window was closed, but just like the rest of the house, it looked like it wouldn't offer much resistance. Lily looked around for a few seconds and fished a rusty metal bar from between the overgrown weeds. Another lightning flash unleashed itself, this one longer than the first. The backyard lit up for a second in pale light. It could have been a burial site, and it wouldn't have looked half as terrifying to me as this backyard did. Suddenly, feeling trapped inside a place I didn't even want to be, part of me wanted to get into the house just to get out of the backyard. Another part of me felt like that was an even worse idea, like a rat cornering itself out of fear. I looked back at Lily, who was now jamming the bar in the window frame. Another flash of lightning, and another roar of thunder almost instantly. Lily stumbled back. What the fuck? She shrieked, with her hands covering her eyes. What happened? I almost jumped those 2 steps towards her and grabbed her by the shoulders. There was a flash in the window, right in my eyes, like someone flicked on a flashlight right in my face. We both realized what she said and jerked our heads towards the window instantly. We should go, now, Lily said. Don't be a baby, I grinned. It was just the lightning reflecting off the window. No, I swear it wasn't like that. It was like a second flash. It came after the lightning, like half a second after it, she cried out. I tried to convince her it was just light reflecting off another object and then reflecting off the window, making it seem delayed. Truth was, I had no idea what it was, and my explanation sounded dumb even to me. My gut was screaming to bolt it out of there, but that growing weight of unease, like a brick in my stomach, was overshadowed by my arrogance. All I thought of was how impressed Lily would be tomorrow if I had been the brave one for once, and a story we could tell our friends. All I could think of was that for once she was the one that wanted to turn back, and I was the one that dared to go on. Looking back on it, I know exactly what the flash she had seen had been, of course, but back there, in that moment, I didn't. I didn't know and I didn't care. Well, you got the window open, I pointed out. The rotten window frame had slid open just a bit, about enough to put your hand through. Come on, Lily, do it for the 2 pizzas I owe you. There was not much left of Lily's ever-positive attitude, but begrudgingly she pushed me towards the window and managed to squeeze out a tiny forced smile. The window led to a room that somehow felt more damp and wet than it did outside in the rain. My flashlight lit up parts of the cramped room, all of them filled with junk and rubbish. In one corner, a small crib, overgrown with mold, slumped over to the side where it missed a leg. The hallway led to a kitchen on one side, a living room right in front of us, and a staircase near the front door on our left. When I check out the kitchen, I poke Lily in her side, who was looking at the living room. "What about the basement?" she responded, trying to twist the handle on the door underneath the staircase. "It's locked," she said as she turned back to me. "I guess that's one less room we could be murdered in," a cautious grin finding its way back on her face. The bottom floor didn't have a lot to see on it. Most of the rooms were empty or just cluttered to the point it felt dangerous to try and make our way through it. The top floor was about 4 rooms and a bathroom, which had the only open door and was right across from the stairs. The moonlight through its windows illuminated the hallway enough to see without a flashlight. The first door I opened was another bedroom, and again it was just cluttered with junk and debris, not even worth trying to step into. Lily had found her way into the last room on the far left. It was unlike all the other rooms. It was still eroded and rotten. There was some junk in the corner, but it looked like someone had tried to keep it clean best they could, as if someone just swept the dirt off the floors, arranged some clutter, and threw out most of the rubble to make it look like a normal living room. A couple of leather sofas lined the wall, one of them fully rotten through, exposing the rusted springs, the other slightly better condition. A living room table in front of us with a broken lamp that wasn't plugged in, and a pair of stained and cracked teacups arranged in front of it. The side table next to the better sofa was piled with a stack of moldy books. "This is so bizarre," Lily spoke in a hushed tone as I went through the stack of moldy books, all of which too damaged or soggy to read. A pair of hands clamped onto me from the back, and I almost shrieked out in shock before I realized it was Lily. "I think someone lives here," Lily whispered in my ear. "We should go, right now, as quietly as we can." "No one lives here, Lily. It's obviously just a prank. Please." She was even closer to me now, her voice both warm and trembling with fear at the same time. "Let's just go." "Okay, we'll go. We've seen most of it anyway," I admitted. I had proven myself enough now, and the fun was pretty much gone. I was ready to order pizza and go to bed. Lily had only taken a few steps towards the door before she stopped, abruptly enough to make me bump into her. Is that?" Lily's voice was audibly shaking now. "Please tell me that isn't what it fucking looks like. This isn't fucking funny." She was still trying to hush her voice, but she was reaching a point of hysterics as she shot a pained look back at me. Because right there, on the wall, next to the door we walked in through just a moment ago, was a framed picture of Lily and I. Under the beam of my flashlight, the Polaroid stood out so much I was amazed we missed it at first. Brand new and spotless, in a dump like this, reflecting the light of my torch like a mirror. It was clearly taken just moments ago, from inside the house. It was Lily in front of the window, holding that rusty piece of metal, with her eyes squinting, and me in the back, looking towards the yard. The picture had been hanging there, framed, as if it was part of the interior, the entire time we had been in the room, and neither of us noticed it for even a second until now. Lily bolted out of the room, not a word said, and honestly, not a word needed to be said. We just ran. Lily's feet tapped on the soggy, creaky boards, but my boots pounded down the corridor. Surely anyone that was in the house would know exactly where we were now. They might be right behind me, and I wouldn't even hear them over the ruckus I was making myself, I realized in a freezing shiver. We bolted down the stairs and made it towards the front door instinctively, which we were obviously not getting through. "Lily, the window, now!" I shouted, almost out of breath from the adrenaline. She instantly turned the corner and headed for the side room we came in through. In a flash, the basement door flung open right when Lily was to pass it. She dashed right into it and I flew right into her. Both of us crashed on the floor hard. Lily looked out of it for a second, facing me, her face tight with pure terror. In front of the open darkness of the basement, I scrambled up to my feet. My knee stung when I put weight on it, but barely registered it in my head. Lily, get up! I shouted as I jumped towards her to grab her and throw her on her feet. But before I could reach her, a bright flash, so bright in a dark house it made my eyes sting, sent me crumbling over, clenching my face. The unmistakable mechanical whizzing of a camera taunted me in that 1 second of silence as I tried to regain my composure. Lily's scream forced me to my feet, and I launched myself towards her, eyes still clenched shut. In pain, I crashed into what felt like what was a wall and collapsed on my back. I started getting my side back slowly, but enough to see that what I crashed into was the basement door, which was shut again. Lily's second scream pierced through the door as the heavy thump of a bolt latched it shut from the other side. I grabbed the handle and jerked it violently. It didn't budge. I heard Lily being dragged down the stairs. If her screams didn't tell me she was getting further and further down, I could have believed someone just threw a bag of bricks down the stairs. I hit the door with my shoulder and nothing. It didn't creak or whine or shake. Her screams ended with a loud thud at the bottom of the stairs. "Lily?" I shouted frantically, looking around in every direction to find something, anything, to break the door open with. Nothing in the rotten house looked like it was durable enough to put even a scratch on the door. In that moment, I did the one thing I will regret until the day I die. And I left the house. It wasn't my intention to leave her, of course. I wanted to get something to open the door with. I flung myself out of the window like the house was on fire, my knee now not only sending a jolt of pain up my leg as I landed, but noticeably less stable to walk on. I didn't even bother getting up as I started feeling around in the near darkness for the metal bar, or anything that would do the trick, but found nothing. The short sense of release I had when I realized I could call the cops was cut short when my phone came out of my pocket so damaged I couldn't even make out what it said on the screen anymore. I had no other option but to leave Lily. I squeezed through the hole in the fence trying to remember if he passed payphones or stores that were still open, anything where I could ask for help. I must have ran for 10 or so minutes at least, biting through my limp and jolts of pain on sheer hysteria and concern for Lily, running in circles from street to street, never straying too far from the house. There wasn't a fucking payphone in sight, and despite me shouting to help, not one of the lights turned on in the few old houses scattered in this rundown part of town, and I felt completely alone. I couldn't run back home. Even if I made it without blowing out my knee, it would take at least 20 minutes, and it would take an extra 20 minutes for the town sheriff to even respond. I had to go back. I gathered all my courage and picked up the first brick I found on the side of the road. I would go in there, break down that door, get Lily out of there, and we would all be fine. By the time I saw the house looming in the distance, at least 20 minutes in total must have passed. Step by step, I dragged myself to the house. The house seemed even more threatening now, almost as if it was mocking me, as if it was daring me to come closer. But there she was, Lily, just sitting there, maybe 50 meters from the house, at the edge of the forest, right in front of it, staring at that damned dilapidated structure. "Lily?" I shouted, dropping the brick beside me and managing to force myself in a slow jog. "Lily, are you okay? Let's go, we have to go. Why are you sitting here?" She only turned her head when I was just a few steps away from her. She looked as if I had broken her concentration, as if she hadn't even realized I was there. Her face almost as pale as a corpse, almost as pale as the moon, and eyes wider than I'd ever seen, skin covered in a sheen of cold sweat. There she was, sitting on a damp tree stump, staring at that damned house, smelling of cold rain and moss. I did not recognize her, and she, in turn, didn't seem to recognize anything about me. She was almost completely unresponsive, borderline catatonic. But behind those terrified eyes, behind that trauma and shock, something twinkled every time she glanced at me, as if she recognized me vaguely but couldn't quite place me, as if she wanted to say something but struggled to find the words. What happened in there? I asked. She glanced down and shook her head sharply just for a second. I didn't know how to handle the situation, but I decided I wouldn't pry. I knew that she would tell me eventually, when she calmed down a bit. I guess we're not gonna go exploring again, are we? I tried to joke, but halfway my chuckle, the tension forced it back in my throat with a soft gasp. To my surprise, she laughed, or rather, giggled, just slightly, barely audible, but she did. A little giddy, a little glee, a little unfit for the moment, but it convinced me she would be fine, that we would be fine. But of course, we wouldn't be. That night was the last time I saw my Lily. That very night she left town, on a train, with nothing more than the dirty clothes on her back. All I could do was follow her around until she got on the train without saying a word to me. After a dozen attempts to get her to talk, I stopped speaking too. She left without as much as a word, let alone an explanation. Just like that, my lifelong friend was gone. The feeling that I deserved her to hate me was even worse than not knowing what she went through, and both of those were equally as painful as not knowing if I'd ever see her again. But all of it was overshadowed by the bitter jolt of guilt that ravaged my senses every time I pictured her terrified face right before I left her. The next time I heard her was 2 days after she left. She called me from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," she said, her flowery voice that I've loved for the better part of my life, suddenly sounding aged and weary. "Lily? Lily, is that you? The sound is so bad. Where are you?" She just giggled, like she did that last night. No words came, just the giggle and her distorted breathing. "Lily, where are you?" I asked, a sense of unease welling up in my gut. "Lily, if you're not doing fine, just talk to me. Please, come back." Again, silence, breathing, and the crackling of the phone. And then she spoke, her voice clear as day, bright, full, and warm, as if she stood beside me and purred right in my ear. "I'll see you soon, I promise," she said before she hung up the phone. Sometimes weeks go by, sometimes months, but she always knows where to find me, even when I change my number. God, I wish she would stop calling me. There's a reason I'm telling this story specifically today. You see, today is January 17th. It's 3 years and a week to the date that we explored that damned house, and 3 years to the day that they found her body, face up at the bottom of the basement stairs, naked and decayed beyond a week of decomposition, unrecognizable as if mauled by a beast, most of the flesh of her beautiful face chewed off. She had been lying there for an entire week, and I had unknowingly left her there. I'll never know if she might have still been alive if I had stayed somehow, if I had done something. Of course, I was the first suspect, but people had seen me with her that night at the train station. People had seen her board the train, and they had seen me leave. My parents confirmed I arrived at an hour that wouldn't have left enough time for me to return to the house and do that to her. The police concluded she must have gotten off the train and went back there on her own. Why? They couldn't explain. And what happened to her? They couldn't explain. But I know better. and I carry that knowledge alone. Today, I spent a few agonizing hours with a few of Lily's old friends and half of her family, as we do every year, talking about how much we miss her and what she could have become if Faith was kinder to her. I stared at her picture on the living room table, a face I've loved for so many years, a face that I now barely recognize, a face that now means suffering to me, a face I wish I never have to see again, which to me feels like abandoning her all over again. The only thing I could think of when I looked at her was the letter I got this morning. The envelope contained just one single Polaroid, a picture of me on that rotten wooden floor, and Lily's hand reaching out to me from the bottom frame. Written on the back, I missed you, but I'll get you. My best friend's mangled body has been buried for 3 years in a church graveyard not a mile from my house, and whatever is wearing her skin refuses to leave me alone.